Okay, so as we are getting ready to get into the Ed puzzle, there's a couple things we need to remember. I want to remind you what our learning goal for today is. We have the same learning goal that we have been had. I just want to make sure we remember what that looks like, sounds like. So, our learning goal. I can explain how conflict positively and negatively changed the ancient Greek city states. We are not going to spend a whole bunch of time going over what that means because we did that already. Remember, we have another video, the one that we did on Tuesday, that explains what these learning goals mean. So if you missed that, if you're confused, go back, watch that video. But here's the expanded thing. So this is exactly what Mr. Seymour needs for you to do. So this is the thing that you have to be able to do. I can provide reasons that the problems and disagreements about land and water, economic resources, trade, government types, and who could be in charge helped and hurt the Greek city-states. So as we watch this video, we are looking for examples of conflict. Does conflict have to mean wars and fighting and violence? Yes or no? No, it can also be problems or disagreements. Doesn't just have to be fighting. So we're looking for problems. We're looking for disagreements that affected Greek city-states. We have to identify if those problems were about natural resources like land, water, materials. We have to identify were those problems and disagreements about trade resources and economics, or were those problems and disagreements about government and who could be in charge, okay? Once we figured out what the problems were and what they were about, we have to be able to explain how they either helped or hurt the Greek city-states. In some things, it might be both, okay? So that's kind of what you will be expected to do as we watch this video. There will be some notes to pop up on this because it's a live. There will be some notes or some things that you will need to listen to me for because I'll give more information.
A lone figure runs across the mountainous terrain of Greece. His name is Pheidippides, citizen of a tiny democracy named Athens. On this
Make
day,
sure we're focused in on
will
this.
make one of the most astonishing athletic achievements in history. The inspiration for our modern now. Pheidippides' quest is not for joy, but survival. His homeland is about to be conquered by the mighty Persian Empire. In the early 5th century BC, the Persians were the greatest power on the world stage. Their vast empire stretched from India in the east to Turkey in the west. Now, out on our western frontier, the tiny state of democratic Athens was gaining power. This was a threat that the Persians would have to destroy. The Persians lived in a culture of unbending tyranny. At the head of their empire sat Darius, known to the Greeks only as the Great King. Suppliants.
Okay, so before you start writing or typing this, please listen. I'll give you time to get this typed or written. Do not do it now. First off, like we have learned, research shows that we learn best if we handwrite notes out because as you move your hand and as you think about the letters that you have to make, it makes connections in your brain. Second best is typing. If you just copy and paste, respectfully, you aren't learning. Okay, so we either need to make sure we're writing this or typing this. The exception is if you have a plan that's on file with the school that says you can do text to speech or you can copy and paste. Other than that, we need to be writing it or typing it. Persia had harsh rules, but a very advanced civilization. If you followed the rules, things went well. Athens loved the freedom of democracy and did not want to live under a king. So again, I need our attention back here. We're going to be bouncing back and forth between the screen and the map. So I need for us to take a look at the map. Again, do not write or type yet. I will give you time to do it. You need to understand this so you know why what you are typing can help with our learning goal. So the first thing you need to understand, Persia was a huge empire. You learned about Persia last year with Miss Burchell. It was one of those empires you learned about as you were learning about Mesopotamia. You remember learning about like the Babylonians and the Akkadians and all of them. The Persians are the people who took them over. So Persia is a massive empire. It goes from India to Turkey. This is a huge empire. Not only were they huge, they were super advanced. This empire was about 2,500 years ago. If you were rich enough in ancient Persia, you had plumbing and sewage in your house, where you lived. They had running water, they had sewage, they had pipes. Yes. Like if somebody today with today's money went back then, probably, right? That would be my guess. But again, 2,500 years ago, they had whole indoor plumbing. Took the poop and the pee away. They had that. They had water coming to their house. 2,500 years ago, they had a fully functioning postal system. They had post office. You could send a letter from southern Persian Empire that is on the coast, the border of India, all the way to the Black Sea with roads and with post office that they had. They were a super advanced society, super successful, super big, super rich. Okay. Now, the thing that was kind of a trade-off was they had a harsh system of government. The empire, the emperor, King Darius or King Darius, he let groups do what they wanted to do. This is where the term King of Kings came from, right? However, can you rule an empire that is this huge without having a strong military? No, right? There were a lot of rules in place, and the punishments for not following those rules were very, very harsh. Since this is an empire, the subjects who live there do not really have a say in government. The normal citizen, the normal person who lives there, not citizen, the normal person didn't have a say in government. They didn't have a choice. Now, Athens, however, from what we see here, was a democracy. So they did have a choice. Okay? The people who lived in Athens did not want to live under the rule of a king because their freedom of choice, their democracy, their getting to vote would go away. So now, remembering that our learning goal is I can explain how conflict positively and negatively changed the ancient Greek city-states. Does this note here, which I know you haven't written down yet, I have not forgotten, this note here, does this talk about a conflict? Remember, conflict does not just have to mean physical violence. What is the disagreement or problem that's going on in this statement? Right. Athens loved democracy. They didn't want to live under a king. Now, if Athens loved democracy and did not want to live under a king, which one of these two groups lived under a king? Athens or Persia? Persia. So, Persia lives under a king. Athens does not. If we think about our learning goal, right? We know what the conflict is. Persia has a king. Athens has a democracy. We have to figure out, is that a disagreement about land and water? Yes or no? No. Is that a disagreement about economic resources or trade? Yes or no? No. Is that a disagreement about government type? Yes or no? Yes. And we can even be more specific, right? Because it wasn't just like Persia and Athens was like, our government's better. Persia and Athens had a disagreement on who could be in charge. Our evidence for that is that Athens didn't want to live under a king. So you can go ahead and get this whole thing typed into your notes. And I also need for you to get this. Athens and Persia had a conflict about who could be in charge. That's what their conflict was about, who could be in charge. So make sure you get those two things into your notes. I'll give you time to get that written down now. Hopefully we understand why it was important. That's pretty funny. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Josie, you can get the information from the screen. You need to write it on paper. How many people need another 30 seconds? How many people need closer to a minute? Okay, so we'll get back together in about a minute. If you don't have it written down after a minute, you can go ahead and get it from table partner at a time where it's convenient. Not going to lie to you, this next part is a little wild, right? The reason why they're going and stuff. Where? There? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue. Again, if you didn't quite get this, one, you can get it from a shoulder partner. Two, you can go back and review this video later.
Cover their mouths in his presence, just to avoid tainting the air he breathed.
Well, that'll be weird because it already has the video there, so we'll put that there.
For Pheidippides and the democratic Athenians, conquest by Darius and the Persians would mean the destruction of their entire way of life.
There is a huge cultural difference between the Greeks and the Persians. The Greeks are a people who emphasize freedom. The Persians would put far more emphasis on obedience. It's a struggle between freedom and slavery.
The Persian force landed at a sandy bay called Malta, just 26 miles from Athens. News of the invasion spread through the streets like wildfire. This was a city without a standing army. Every male citizen would have to come to the defense of his state. The poorer citizens have spears, sticks, bows, and arrows, whatever weapons they can find. But the heart of the Athenian force would be the hoplites, men who could afford heavy bronze armor, a shield, a spear, a sword.
Bless you.
The Athenians would field a small but determined force.
That's probably the first time in the history of the Athenian state that the entire population had been mustered. And for them to field 10,000 hoplites out of a citizenry that might have only been 20 or 30,000, it's a level.
Okay, so again, before we start writing, let me explain why this is important. Okay, Persia sent around 20,000 professional troops to Athens by ship. And the words that I use here are important. Persia sent around 20,000 professional troops to Athens by ship. Athens had about 10,000 troops. They were not a standing army who practiced all the time. So here's what that means. Persia, they sent 20,000 people who were professional, trained. Hi, this is my job. I go to work and get paid to learn how to be a soldier and fight people, soldiers, to Athens. Athens had 10,000 troops and they were citizens. They were not professional soldiers. They did not train day in and day out. Their main job was not being a soldier. For Athens, these 10,000 people, they were farmers. They were shop owners. They were blacksmiths. They were people who made pottery. They were regular, everyday citizens. They were not professional soldiers. Now, if we stop and think about it, we're going to come back to our map. And I want to ask you a question where we're going to have to use some of that good wrinkle brain thinking power. Again, Persia. Athens, right? If we look at the size of Persia, do we think they had more or less than 20,000 troops? Look at how big this empire is. Do we think they sent every single troop they have to Greece? Yes or no? No, right? So if Persia only sent 20,000 troops, did they believe that 20,000 troops would be enough to do the job? What do you think? Yes or no? Yes. If they didn't think 20,000 was enough, they would have sent more. But Persia looks at this and they're like, all right, we are sending 20,000 paid professional troops. This would be like in the United States, we have our U.S. Marines, right? They are a very strong fighting force. They are not a special forces group, but as far as like fighting forces go, they are highly trained. They are really good at what they do. Their job is to practice warfare. If you are a Marine who's not like in the reserve, if you're a U.S. Marine, your job, the way you get paid, the way you feed your family, is by doing things to help prepare for or participate in battle. That is your job. This is what the Persians sent, right? 20,000 people whose job was to prepare for war, was to know how to fight, was to train for battle. This would be like if the 20,000 US Marines went up against 10,000 dudes who once a month go play paintball at Jaegers with their friends, right? This is what this is like. You've got a professional standing army going up against a bunch of dudes who are just doing this. So Persia thought 20,000 troops would be more than enough. 20,000 professional troops against 10,000 guys who are not professional troops, they thought that was enough. If they didn't think that was enough, they would have sent more because they have way more than 20,000 soldiers, okay? So this is a huge thing to remember. Persia sent 20,000 professional troops. We should highlight or underline professional troops because that's the super important part as we are getting this into our notes. So you can go ahead and get that into your notes. How many people need another 30 seconds? How many people think they need closer to a minute? Okay. Okay, we're gonna get back together in about 10 seconds here. All right, so this next part, I want you to listen to how far this guy Phidippides runs. It is out of control.
The level of involvement is astounding.
But as they faced the Persians on the battlefield, the Athenians held out little hope of victory. They were outnumbered by 2 to 1.
So this is a quick check-in. This should not take very long, right? We're going to keep it moving here. What was the ratio of Persian Athenian troops? Was it 2 Athenian fighters for every 1 Persian fighter? Or was it 2 Persian fighters for every 1 Athenian? 2 Persians for every Athenian. Go ahead, click that in real quick, and we're moving on. That's a pretty easy one. You do not need to write this in your notes. You only have to write the things that say for your notes. So that's just a quick check-in. We're moving on.
Phidippides' desperate
You didn't get to check in?
run for help from one of Athens' local rivals, the Greek state
You're all right.
of Sparta.
Go ahead.
Even as he ran, Phidippides must have imagined the horror that his fellow Athenians now faced.
You're dodging spears from your man in front and your man behind. You probably couldn't see or hear. All you would feel would be pressure. You wouldn't see the sword plunge that took one of your testicles off. You would not see the spear thrust that took your head off. You would have no idea what was going on, just the momentum that carried you ahead. All you would be aware of is that you had to push forward and keep stabbing and keep on your feet, and you would hope that everybody else would do that.
Phidippides' run was to become the stuff of legend. Fired by the terror that his fellow citizens were being slaughtered, he ran 140 miles in just 2 days. But Phidippides' quest would end in failure. Help would be refused.
So, first off, how far did he run? 140 miles in 2 days. He ran. He didn't hop in the car and do that. He ran, right? And from what we know about the geography of Greece, from what we've learned, was this going to be over flat terrain? No. Yes or no? No. He's running up and down hills. He's running through mountain passes. This is a hard run. Because remember, he starts off in the city-state of Athens. He has to run from Athens across the Corinthian Isthmus, through the city-state of Corinth, on through the Peloponnesus, all the way to Sparta in the Peloponnesus. Okay? This is a huge deal. Now, why is he doing this? Because Sparta has the best fighting force in all of Greece. Part of the reason Sparta has the best fighting force in all of Greece is because Sparta doesn't really have a lot of resources. The way they get what they need is by taking over city-states around them, enslaving those people, and taking their resources. So Sparta is a military society. Every citizen in Sparta, every Spartan citizen man is part of the military. They go to military like you all go to school. Their military school for boys started when they were 6. They graduated when they were 18. Sounds pretty familiar, right? Kindergarten to senior in high school. They practiced war, okay? So, Sparta was Athens' only hope. So this guy Phidippides, he's running to Sparta to ask them to help. Because remember, Sparta and Athens are both Greeks. It's like we were learning about with our last learning goal. They had shared cultural identity. Phidippides and the Athenians were like, hey, we speak the same language. We have the same alphabet. We have the same religion. We can read each other's languages. The Persians are not like us. Will you please help us? If you don't help us, our city-state is cooked, right? And as he's running these 140 miles, I'm sure he's thinking about how to persuade the Spartans, because if he doesn't, he knows when he gets back to Athens, Athens is going to be destroyed. He's probably never going to see his family again. His wife and kids are either going to be killed or they're going to be slaves. His friends are going to be dead. So he has got to get Sparta to say yes. And he gets to Sparta after running this 140 miles or the 70 miles there or whatever. He gets there and he asks them, will you help us? We are both Greeks. Will you help us? And Sparta's like, can't do it, fam. Now, why would Sparta say that? Well, let's think about this. And again, one of our learning goals is to provide reasons for problems and disagreements, right? So Sparta, yeah, there's going to be a bit of a line. Sparta, for a couple of reasons, yes. Thank you. Sparta doesn't want to help Athens for a couple of reasons. Number one, remember, these city-states are in conflict. So if we look here, they were rivals. Sparta and Athens do not see the world the same way. They compete for resources. They compete. Sparta and Athens were both trying to be the strongest city-state, the best city-state, the most successful city-state. So the first thing Sparta thinks, which is actually really, really smart, Sparta goes, okay, our big rival is Athens. Persia has this super strong army that has never been defeated. Persia is going to take care of Athens for us. Okay? So Sparta's like, well, wait a minute. If we can get our rival taken care of, right? They felt that if Persia destroyed Athens, then Sparta's main competition would be eliminated without Sparta having to fight them. So Sparta's like, this is great. Persia, who never loses, Persia, who has this strong military, is going to go and they are going to beat Athens. We're going to become the most powerful city-state. We didn't have to go fight a war. We didn't have to lose a single soldier to do it. This is fantastic. So that's one reason that Sparta's like, not going to happen. The other reason is even more important. Sparta knew that the war had started because Athens helped Ionia in a revolt against Persia. Sparta knew what it was like to have revolts and felt that Athens deserved to be punished for helping with a revolt. So do you remember how I told you that Sparta had lots of slaves? There were more enslaved people in Sparta than there were Spartans. Okay? So Sparta was a military government. If we think about the military, even in a country like the United States where we have the ability to vote and choose and have a say, in the military, could a group of privates go up to their commanding officer and say, Sergeant, even though that order you gave us was a lawful order, none of us really feel like doing it today. And well, we as privates all voted and, there's one of you and there's 20 of us and we voted that we don't want to do this, so we're not going to do this. Would that fly in the military? No. Not at all, right? So the Spartans are going to be very much about strict punishments, very much about order, very much about following orders, and very much understand that revolts can be dangerous. So the Persians and the Spartans actually had more in common with the way they saw the world than the Spartans and the Athenians. So the second thing that we need to have here, Athens and Sparta had a conflict about which government type was best. Because remember, was Sparta trying to take over Athens? No. Was Athens trying to take over Sparta? No. But they disagreed on which government style was best. That was their conflict. And so Sparta is kind of like, Athens, this is your own stupid fault for messing with other people's business. You had no right to interfere and try to help people to overthrow Persia. That was dumb on your part. So now, because you went and made Persia mad, we're supposed to help you and risk Spartan lives, risk our soldiers' lives, when you all don't even have an army that you have. You don't even think it's important to have a standing army. You don't think it's important to pay people to be in the military. And you want to come ask us to risk our lives to help you when you started this? No, sir, no, ma'am. So Sparta actually low-key agrees with Persia more than they agree with Athens when it comes to like worldview. They think Athens messed up and was getting nosy and not minding their business. And they feel if Athens gets beaten by Persia, they're going to be the strongest city-state. So it kind of makes sense that they would say no, doesn't it? And it makes a ton of sense. I know you didn't have time to get this written down, but I know some of us started to. So go ahead, take a moment to get this written down and make sure you get this part written down too. Athens and Sparta had conflict about which government type was best. I don't think so because it was a long one. So I think you're good. No. There's a little bit of a line. You're going to be next. All right. If she comes back, you can go. If she comes back, you can go. Hi. Can't leave the class because they're both kind of plugged in. But if you don't need your Chromebook, you can bring it in here to charge. Or if you want to borrow the loaner, as long as you bring it back, you could do that and then charge your Chromebook up in here.
Chargers are in ELA.
Okay. All right. How many people need another 30 seconds? How many people feel like they need closer to a minute? Okay. We'll get back together in about a minute. Or that. Charge. Who could be in charge? So you should have wrote this with the note about Persia and the 10,000 troops. You should have wrote this with the one that we just got that's up here now. Okay. I'm going to be super honest. I know coming back from lunch, we had a discussion about what focus should look like. We've done a really good job of being focused. I appreciate that. Let's keep up the good work. I know this is a longer lecture thing and it's kind of hard to sit still, but we're doing a really good job. Let's keep it going. Yes. Let's see. Athens and Sparta had a conflict about which government type was best. Okay. If you, yeah. How long was the best one? I see what you did there, but no. 2. You'd go after Kelly. Okay. All right, here we go.
Who that he had voted to fight, and that this reflected the majority vote of the citizens, and that was not true.
Excuse me.
Whatever you want to say about democracy, it feels the most superior.
The Athenians returned to their city to celebrate their victory.
Hold up, Mr. Seymour. Athens wins the battle. This shocks everyone. Remember, Athens didn't even think Athens was going to win. Athens kind of had this attitude of, we're going to go to Marathon. We are going to hold up the Persians as long as we can. We're going to go out in a blaze of glory, and hopefully our sons and our wives and our daughters will be able to escape Athens, and our sacrifice will mean that they will not be enslaved or killed. But the 10,000 guys that went to fight at Marathon, they did not really think they were going to win. The Persians didn't think Athens was going to win. If the Persians thought Athens was going to win, would they have only sent 20,000 troops? Yes or no? No. These Spartans didn't think Persia or Athens was going to win. That's why they didn't want to help them. They wanted Athens to lose. Nobody thought Athens was going to win. So this shocked everyone when it happened. Because remember, Persia had never lost a war to this point. Okay? So it shouldn't take us too long to get this written down. But the thing that I need for us to remember and think about, we know Persia only sent 20,000 troops because they thought 20,000 troops was going to be enough. Now, since Persia has never lost, do y'all think they're going to be cool with getting beat? Do you think they're going to be like, oh, well, Athens, you got us, darn? Or do you think they're going to come and try to get their get back? They want to get their get back, right? So, do you think if Persia is going to come and get their get back and they thought twice as many troops was enough and it wasn't, do you think they're going to make that mistake again? No. Again, think of the size of the Persian Empire. They can get 500,000 troops like that. King Darius could get 750,000 fighting men like that. He could get like up to 1 million troops because at this time, the Persian Empire has 60 million people living in it. He could get a group of 1 million soldiers together, no problem. And remember, Athens only has like 65,000 people total. That includes men, women, children, babies. So, Persia is going to come for their get back. And they're not going to make the same mistake. It's kind of like, you remember when we were analyzing stories, we had the story of the tortoise and the hare. Do you think if the tortoise and the hare have a rematch, the hare is going to stop and take a nap again? No, he learned his lesson. The hare is going to take off running and not stop, and he's going to smoke the tortoise. He's going to beat the turtle. It's the same thing here. Persia underestimated their enemy. They lost. They're not going to make that mistake again. So when they come back, they're coming for their get back. Yes, sir. They are like, that's not happening again. So you need to get your water still?
But amongst them was one for whom the war with Persia had only just begun.
When Kellen comes back.
An Athenian general named Themistocles.
You're supposed to do that on the way to lunch. So passing period, you can do it.
He was typical of a new generation of Athenian leaders, a man who had risen to power through democracy.
Themistocles was a fascinating character, very much an example of the effect of democracy in Athens. It's relatively clear that he doesn't come from the inner circle of the landed aristocracy that traditionally had ruled in Athens.
There were stories told about his feeling rather touchy about the fact that he hadn't had a traditional aristocratic upbringing, for example, in music and poetry. In fact, that might have given him a spur to show that he could do as well as someone who had gone to all the right schools, as it were.
Themistocles' opinion of his common origins was blunt and straightforward. I may not know how to play the lyre or flute, but I do know how to make a city great. Themistocles had learned the skills of leadership here, the Democratic Assembly of Athens. Here, any Athenian could stand before his fellow citizens and try to convince them to follow his leadership.
Oh, nice. What game?
From this very podium, Themistocles would now show himself to be one of history's greatest leaders.
Nothing wrong with learning about history stuff. All right, this guy Themistocles is really smart. You need to listen to this. This is really smart.
And that next time, victory for the Athenians might not prove so easy.
Themistocles realized that the Persians, if they came again, it would be in a way that made sure that they weren't going to be defeated by land again. There was no way that the Athenians would rely on traditional tough-like fighting technique.
Themistocles began to form a bold new strategy, employing the most advanced weapon of the day.
Okay, So again, before we start writing, Themistocles knew that Persia would not be okay with losing and would attack again. He also knew that Persia would bring even more troops the next time and that Athens would not be able to fight them off. He was worried about this. So go ahead and get that into your notes. That's going to be a pretty big deal. He knows Persia's coming back. How many people need another 30 seconds? How many people need closer to a minute? Okay, we'll go closer to a minute. Excuse me. Is that yours, Reagan? Did you drop your ID?
Oh,
Let's see if we can get it here. You're welcome. So you typing or writing? We good, or do we need another 30 seconds? This one's a little bit longer. So I just want to make sure we understand. And if you have played Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the boat that's in there that you get is a trireme. It is a fighting boat. So a trireme is a warship. Okay. So when he's talking about these triremes, basically it was like a big battering ram. It had a big heavy post at the beginning that they covered with metal, and then it was very narrow, and it had 3 rows of people who could row it, so it could go very fast. Have y'all done Force in Motion yet with Miss Platt? Okay, so you know that force is equal to acceleration times mass. My football players, that should make a ton of sense. If you have mass and you are going faster, you will hit harder, right? So these boats had a lot of mass in a very narrow package, and they could go really fast. So they hit with a lot of force. They were the best warships around. Themistocles is like, we can't fight the Persians with soldier for soldier. So we need to make sure we have a really strong navy. If we have a really strong navy, we might stand a chance. Okay. But are people going to just go and want to buy these ships? No. So in this next part, we're going to learn how Themistocles was able to persuade people that it was important to buy these ships.
Weapon of the day.
And this beat kind of goes a little hard.
Triremes had been developed by the Greek state of Corinth, the ancient world's finest shipbuilders. Stacking 170 oarsmen on 3 levels, their combination of lightweight and raw power gave them astonishing speed and maneuverability. There was nothing else like them on the water.
In contemporary terms, a trireme is a missile. The object of a trireme is to ram the enemy's ship. It is a very narrow, very light, very sleek, and very fast weapon.
But these triremes were also exceedingly expensive. Themistocles' vision of a vast Athenian navy might never have come to pass if it had not been for one stroke of luck. In the year 483 BC, the Athenians discovered a great vein of silver in their territory, worth 100 talents, a vast amount in the ancient world. The Athenians wanted to divide these newfound riches among themselves. But then Themistocles stood up in the assembly. He wanted to spend the money on ships. But he also knew that this would be a hard proposal to sell. And so Themistocles played a complex bluff.
His argument
This is
is
super
not that
smart.
the money should be used to build a fleet against Persia, but rather it should be used to build a fleet against Athens' local rival, the Greek city-state of Aegina. The reason.
So this is super smart what Themistocles does. So Themistocles knew that people would be freaked out even thinking about having to fight Persia again, right? Because remember, they knew they had no hope of beating the Persian army. The only reason they won the first time is because Persia underestimated them. So Themistocles knows if he's like, hey guys, the Persians are coming, everybody's going to freak out. So what he does is he also knows that with the silver they found, some people are going to be like, that's a lot of money. Let's split it up amongst ourselves. Now we're all eating good. But what Themistocles does is he says they should use the silver they found to protect themselves from the city-state of Aegina. Okay? Now, again, does Themistocles really think Aegina is going to come for Athens? Yes or no? No. Who's really coming for Athens? Persia. But he says Aegina so he doesn't freak everybody out. So the people agree and they buy all these triremes, these fighting ships, these war ships. Okay? What I need for you to do, pause for just a second and I'll give you time to get this written down, but you need to hear because there are two things I need for you to do. So, in just a moment after you get done writing or typing this, remember our learning goal is to provide reasons that problems and disagreements about land and water, economic resources, trade, government types, who could be in charge, helped and hurt Greek city-states. We have identified who had disagreements. Athens and Persia had a disagreement. Athens and Sparta had a disagreement. We did the first part. We identified what the conflict was about. Athens and Persia had a conflict about who could be in charge. Athens and Sparta had a conflict about which government type was better or more efficient. The third part of our learning goal, you have to explain how these conflicts either helped or hurt Athens and Sparta. Now, this information here needs to go into our purple boxes in our grapes chart. And the part that you need to add is how did the conflict between Persia and Athens help Athens? How did the conflict between Persia and Athens hurt Athens? How did the conflict between Athens and Persia help Sparta and hurt Sparta? How did the conflict between Athens and Sparta help and hurt them both? Mr. Seymour didn't talk with us about that. That's the part that you have to analyze and add. So before the bell rings, you need to make sure this gets into your notes. You need to make sure these two things get into your grapes chart and that you explain how each of these helped or hurt the Greek city-states. Any questions on that? Great. Yeah, the two blue ones go into your grapes chart. Now that I'm thinking about it, if I would have been a good teacher, I should have wrote this in purple because it's going in the purple box. I'll think about that for next time. All right. Again, we did an awesome job of focusing in. This was like an hour's worth of lecture and notes, and you all stayed focused. I really appreciate that. Great job.